This is the Final Word Daily. England, Ireland, the first test, the only test at the Lord's Cricket Ground. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins here with you, plus the hovercraft churning away in the background. The Daily Show is brought to you by Westfield, London and Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary.
Very good.
Adam, tell us about the entire day's play in the space of 30 seconds.
Ireland sent in on a pitch that looked a bit green, but didn't do an awful lot. Didn't stop Stuart Broad. 3 wickets in a hurry. They were 19 for 3. They were 19 for 4 momentarily, and a leap before decision, Paul Sterling overturned. They recovered briefly with McCullum and Sterling putting on 45. Lost him before lunch. Couple of wickets after lunch as well. They were in strife by tea. Ultimately all out 172. Broad 5 for 51. England by the closer 152 for 1 there. Baz balling it at 6 and over. Half century to Crawley, who's already out, caught and bowled, and Duckett's still there on 60 odd.
Very, very good. It was, it felt sort of familiar and comforting in some sort of ways. It was broad off the top. And I think if Ireland had got to lunch 3 down for 60 odd, they might have gone, okay, fair enough. That's a reasonable enough return to come through that first session, but it's that 4th wicket at the stroke of lunch. Sterling playing the sweep shot, the glove, lobbing up to Johnny Bairstow, back behind the stumps where he wants to be.
Yep.
That made it feel like, I know we were worried about with Ireland before this match was their batting.
Yep.
And how it would stand up, and in the end 4 down for 60. It felt like they were going to make 180, and in the end that's about what they made.
Yeah, so, well, at once it's a forgivable way of getting out because that's the shot that Sterling plays. We always hear from the Aussie team, you want to fail the way you succeed. So in theory, he's done that. On the other hand, it's unforgivable 15 minutes before lunch to get out that way when Leach is almost certainly bowling his final over of that stretch. And I draw that conclusion because the previous 2 overs, they didn't get a hold of Leach, but they were patting him back to him. There was no meaningful turn. There was nothing really going on with the surface all through the air in the first session. CricViz had a good stat that there was 0.6 of a degree of swing before lunch, which is the least in a test match at Lord's in the first session in their database. So that's a pretty big sample size.
2006.
Well, it's a pretty. But when you consider, we think of Lord's Day 1 being, and there wasn't much off the surface either. They've got that separate metric. So
sure. It
did swing a lot more after lunch with Stuart Broad, especially when he picked up his 4th wicket. But broadly speaking, they got to a stage at 3 down after the collapse. As I said in the summary, they put on 45.
Yeah.
McCollum was doing everything right. Sterling was scoring it better than a run of ball. Yeah, if they're 80 for 3 at lunch, it's almost, I wouldn't say, it's not Ireland's session, but it's probably on as even in the circumstances.
It's Ireland would accept that as a
absolutely.
not unreasonable position.
Especially from being 19 for 4 on the scoreboard for a couple of minutes before that Broad leg before on Sterling. Would have been 2 in 2 balls, and Hawkeye had it missing the leg stump by 1 centimetre.
1 centimetre?
1 centimetre.
Yeah, okay. I mean, and it felt very broad, the angle in that gets the LBW. That was about as plumb as you can get in front of middle stump there. You've got the edge to slip for Belburney, and then you've got the leg slip dismissal as well, to walking at him, Tector flicking down the leg side. You generally don't advance at Stuart Broad, I suppose, but
Tector will be gutted. Because they didn't have a leg gully in. It's kind of like a 4th leg slip. Wasn't quite leg gully, wasn't quite leg slip, but it worked. Broad had the hands to his mouth, reminiscent of the catch from Stokes from Adam Voges at Nottingham all those years ago. Not quite the full 2-hand job, but you know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to, didn't have the second bit involved.
Fee on hand.
But it was emblematic of, it sort of typified Ireland's morning, really, that he got himself out, Tector, and he's the coming man. Yeah. And Balburney's out of touch. There's no way of getting around. It was a shot that you play when you're feeling for it. The feet aren't quite moving. There's no real rhythm in the game. He's just not having a great time of it at the moment. And another test duck for him. He'll be mortified as well.
Well, I mean, to follow on from the pair that he made on debut, but I mean, he's got a test 82 and a test 95.
Yep.
So he's come close a couple of times to notching that 100 as well. I feel for him in that way. And how are you supposed to get in touch when you don't get to play in the format? Ireland have got to play in the last couple of months a couple of times, which is very unusual for them. But broadly speaking, how is a player like him supposed to reach the level that he would naturally be at if he played, 10 tests a year?
Of course, it typifies, or it's an emblem rather, of the Irish red ball problem. They used to have the ability to play county cricket, and many of the Irish players that played here in 2019 had that experience as county pros after becoming full members. Just a bit of history here. They were given a 2-year window where they could keep playing in county cricket before that door was shut, unless they were overseas players. And now the reality is they don't have access to playing red ball cricket in quite the same way. It's a structural challenge for Ireland moving forward. But Balbirnie was on the books here at Middlesex for a number of years. Well, that couldn't happen these days unless he was an overseas pro. Therefore, what prep's he getting? Well, 3 days against Essex in a game where 15 Irish players played across two sides. I mean, it never was going to quite add up here.
Right. The other McCullum, the one opening the batting for Ireland, hung around for a while, did his bit, faced 108 balls, made 36, and just got Stuart Broaded in conventionally Stuart Broad way. Hard length, little bit of movement away, you push forward at it, you pop up a slip to Joe Root. Many have gone that way before him.
He's up to 582 wickets, and they don't come much more conventional than caught at Root in the breadbasket. It did have a bit of a bobble, but it drifted to him because McCollum did take weight out of his bottom hand. So in some respects, he's unlucky that it carried on another day that doesn't quite reach first slip. But I think McCullum did a great job, especially before lunch. He's got one fantastic shot, the square drive, and he likes to play it a lot. And when you give him width outside the off stump, that's where he's at his most productive. And he needed to stick around, not having PJ Moore with him going early across his stumps leg before. Moore's the more experienced of those two, having played Test cricket for Zimbabwe, so he's on that list of guys that have played Tests for two nations. McCollum's played all but one Test match for Ireland, so it's not his first time out. But it felt with him like if they could kind of build around him, and they were for a time with Sterling, and indeed they were for a time after lunch as well. But the partnerships needed to be sort of 70 or 80, not 30 or 40.
And then Leach building through the middle. It's one of the things I enjoy about this era of England cricket. They're all like, rock and roll cricket, smash it around, but also let's play Jack Leach in every Test match. The least rock and roll cricketer you can imagine. He's like the guy playing the cowbell in the Blue Oyster Cult recording studio session. He's got one job to do, but he does it pretty well, which is basically bowl straight. So he gets the one off the glove that we spoke about before the lunch break, but then he just bowls straight essentially, and he gets Lorcan Tucker with one that's almost clearing the bails but not quite. It's given out on the field, so he stays out on review, and then he has Curtis Camphor dancing down at him and missing the ball and losing his poles. And they both did a bit, again, emblematic of the way that Ireland goes, I suppose, is that both of those two made a score, 18 and 33 respectively, if I remember rightly, and didn't go on with it.
Yeah, McCollum 36, he was out first after lunch. And with Leach, like
Camphor, I mean.
Camphor. Right, you are. Yeah. Jack Leach bowled, I think 40 minutes had elapsed in the day's play. 2 summers ago, when Joe Root was captain, Jack Leach didn't play a single Test match. And now, the way that Stokes uses Leach, I mean, in its own way, it's kind of baseball, right? It was a match-up thing. He wanted him to tempt Sterling. Sterling's first ball facing Leach, he swept at him, because that's what Sterling does, and he just cleared backwards square. On another day, that gets dragged down, and Leach's first ball's a wicket. But,
and last time he played Ireland here, he bowled 3 overs in the match.
Quite right. He opened the batting and made 90 odd, and that was the broader contribution. He was player of the match.
He made 92, was player of the match, having bowled 3 overs without taking a wicket.
But, the idea that Leach would be used as an aggressive option inside the first 45 minutes of play comes down to them believing that Leach can do a job for them, even if his numbers, I mean, they're not exceptional numbers since McCullum and Stokes took over or anything. He's averaging, I think, 39 or around that mark. It's more that Leach fits into their strategy. And look, Stokes didn't bowl today either, so they needed Leach to bowl a number of overs. They had a man on debut in Josh Tongue, who we'll talk about in a sec, I'm sure, and bowled quickly. But it was a different strategy to what we would have seen for many years. And you're hearing that from Stuart Broad after play as well. Broad, who picks up the bag of 5, but he's like, no, you need to understand that the way McCullum and Stokes want us bowling, they do not care whether we get driven. And we heard Anderson say this a lot last year. He drew a comparison to Andrew Strauss's captaincy, where economy rate was everything. They sort of did the numbers and worked out if you kept it tight, wickets would come. That's the philosophy of a lot of Test match sides. If you keep it at 2 and over, the pressure will build, you'll get a wicket.
John Buchanan style, 3 maidens in a row, you get a wicket.
There you go. Here, they're like, no, we do not care how many runs you go for, as long as you're giving yourself a chance to bowl wicket-taking deliveries consistently enough. And, of course, Broad did that today.
Yeah, so he picks up 5, he gets marked there with a beauty, the one that just comes in a bit and tickles the outside of the off stump. A very pleasing way for a fast bowler to bring up the 5. Matthew Potts picks up a couple of tail end wickets. Well. Josh Tongue doesn't get a wicket on debut. Tongue ran dry today.
The liquor.
I
don't like the tonguey. I played with a bloke called Sean Tonguey when we were kids. He was a great player, so I've thought about him quite a bit today. But Josh Tongue,
surely you give him a better nickname than Tonguey.
Yeah, well,
like
we were 12, weren't we? But we've gone with liquor on the Guardian today for Josh Tongue. But he bowled up above 90 mile an hour a few times. His quickest deliveries were 91 mile an hour. So that's near enough to 146, 147 in new money. And I wonder whether they will, as the summer progresses, whether on the back of that one performance, and look, his numbers today, 13 overs, 4 maidens, done for 40, bowled very tidily at the start. It doesn't feel like it's a shape-shifting effort, but it's the fact that Archer and Stone won't probably play any Ashes in Stone, certainly won't in Archer's case. Wood will only play, 3 at most?
At best, yeah.
At best. He's probably the next best option to be the quick guy, and he did implement the short pitch strategy at times today. He hit McCullum on the helmet once. He looked pretty lively, and, cliched as it is, he bowled the heavy ball with balls hitting the splice of the bat. It's kind of what you want out of the guy bowling first change behind Robinson, Anderson, Broad, I think.
Have a drink of heavy water. Crawley and Duckett, this is the ultimate hiding to nothing sort of match for those two players, I reckon, because if they make runs against Ireland, people will say it doesn't count. And if they don't make runs against Ireland, then they're absolutely trash because they didn't make runs against Ireland.
Crawley, this was observed on Twitter by John H., very good Twitter user. You can. He's in the anti-Crawley camp for what it's worth. You can draw whatever conclusion you want out of Crawley's performance today. He ends with 56 from 45 balls. Hits some stunning drives, like 10 out of 10 classical cover drive, the stuff you see from Crawley routinely. Also had the inside edge absolutely peppered.
Was it 3 or 4 boundaries off the inside edge past his stumps?
Any of them could have ricocheted back onto leg stump or ended up with the wicket keeper or whatever it is. Then gets out in a fashion that can be interpreted as a bit unlucky, great catch, or you spoon one back to the bowler. You can pick any story you want when writing your analysis piece tonight.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Rorschach sort of innings. I felt pretty sorry for Mark Adair. We talked about him leading the attack. We talked about him, being the one to take it up to them. He went at about 8.5 and over, and a lot of those boundaries were edge. He got 1 off the outside edge and 3 off the inside edge, I reckon, from Crawley that all went to the boundary.
He was so stiff.
He had none,
and he did bowl some bad deliveries too. I don't want it to sound like he's had a great day or anything, but Adair at one point had none for 50 from 5. He's dragged it back with a maiden just before the close of play, so it looks less bad than it otherwise was at none for 59 from 7. But England have ticked over at 6.1 and over in their first, what have they been out there for? 25 overs for 152 runs. That was unheard of a year ago, even against a side that's ranked lower down the charts like Ireland. We'd be making a big deal of that. Today it's barely noteworthy that they're going at a runner ball. This is just what they do now. I was, in a way, surprised they didn't reach parity by stumps.
That's day one. Let's collect our thoughts for the Final Word Hall of Fame. The Final Word Hall of Fame is when we pick the most final word moment of the day. It's brought to you by Westfield, London.
And Westfield, Stratford City.
Stratford City.
Stratford
I like to
City.
think that's like the modern Shakespeare. He's not from Stratford upon Avon. He's from Stratford City, mate. Bring it on, mate.
We got something. The idea is, if you can't get to the cricket, go to Westfield, London, or Westfield, Stratford City. If you're at the London version, you can go to the Westwood Sports Bar, or you can test your skills at one of 3 places. All-Star Lanes, I assume that's a bowling alley. Putt. I can't read my own handwriting. Putt Shack. That's where you presumably putt golf balls. Or sixes, where you can smash them. That's all at Westfield, London. Westfield, Stratford City, bat and ball for darts, pool, ping pong, beer pong, live DJs, karaoke. What more could you want? Or you can hit your dingers at the Home Run House. That's westfield.com/United-Kingdom. That's in our show notes. Westfield, London, and Westfield, Stratford City.
Okay.
More extra.
Less ordinary?
More extra, less ordinary.
Go write some sonnets at Stratford City. Now, I almost went there accidentally today because I was on the overground, and then suddenly it just went express and skipped like 8 stations and took me out pretty much to Shepherd's Bush. And I was like, oh, there's the Westfield. And then I came back again.
Well, you go from Stratford to Westfield, you'll meet the two.
Exactly, from Westfield to Westfield across the boroughs of London.
We'll do that journey on social media at some point.
Yeah, it'll be like trying to get to all of the county venues in one day. Can we get to both Westfields in 1 hour? Can we play golf at one and darts at the other? Now, Hall of Fame, I would like to nominate the field that was set by Ben Stokes just before lunch for Josh Tongue. You talked about him using the short ball. He's coming in and he's got 6 out on the leg side with a deep third, a cover and a mid-off, was it? And no, he had a wide slip, an extra cover and a deep third with 6 on the leg side in about the 20th over of the Test match on the first morning at Lord's when they're already 4 down. It was fun. It was stupid. It was pointless, but it was entertaining.
It's very baseball energy. We're being joined by the man on the loudspeaker. Frank Clayton from Westfield, Stratford City.
I thought he
report.
said Frank Plankton, which sounded like a SpongeBob SquarePants character. Like, here he comes, I'm Frank Plankton. I'm cantankerous, the cantankerous Frank Plankton.
Can we talk about Ben Duckett for a
Please.
sec? We've kind of skipped over him. He ends tonight on, let me check, we may as well give you the exact number, shall we? 61 from 71 balls, batted really well. He's played 27 games for England. None of them have been in England until today, which is nice for him. But my Hall of Fame isn't even about that. It's about the national anthem. So in the usual way, at the front of the pavilion, he was stood next to Stuart Broad and to Zak Crawley, the two tallest men on the field. And Ben Duckett was right between them. And Sky did the pan shot across the front. And I'll tweet it out. Duckett only has, like, from his chin upwards when these two blokes are entirely in shot. It is an absolutely ridiculous photo. And even when he reached 50, or it might have been when Crawley reached 50, they went to shake hands and he's just being towered over by his opening partner.
And he looks very chinny in that shot. He looks like Paul Sterling. He looks like Bilbo Baggins has opened his door and there's one of the dwarves. Like he's got this beard popping up, he's got this chin popping up, and I was like, oh, which 45-year-old member of the support staff is that? And why are they with the team when they're singing the anthems? What's going on?
Why is the physio out there?
Is this some new kind of McCullum thing where they get it, like everyone has to shake everyone's hand at the end, everyone gets out there for the song? No, it was a playing member of the England 11 who's about 28 or something like that.
About right. Other bits and bobs that caught my eye today, caught my ears more to the point, with Johnny Bairstow back behind the stumps, just loving life. His chat is dreadful, but he just goes and goes and goes. I forgot what that soundtrack is like. Put it this way, Sky Cricket aren't at risk of being, or any of their commentators aren't at risk of being overtaken by Bairstow behind the stumps anytime soon. But I'm glad he enjoyed himself. And one little prediction ahead of tomorrow. Here's how I see it. FA Cup final starts at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. To get a round of golf in before that, they need to get a 10 o'clock tee time. I'm seeing declaration middle of tomorrow. They're 20 runs short of parity right now. If they bat for 45 overs tomorrow, they could find themselves in the lead by 130, 140, 150, who knows, maybe 180. And they will back themselves to finish this in 2 days. 2 90-over days, sorry, last gripe on the day. Why is this not a 98-over day? 4 years ago, these were 6.5-hour playing days. All 4-day test matches to this point have been played with the extra half an hour allowed each day. However unlikely it would be needing use this week. Why have they simply cut it back to 4 straight days? That's not how, when we were being sold 4-day test cricket, Jeff, it was all about, it's not really 4, you get 2 hours back.
And blah, blah, blah. And
they've had us. They've snuck this in under the dark of night.
I'm going to throw in my last one. Now, obviously, the fee on hand catch is Hall of Fame worthy. It's smacked back at him. He sort of volleys it off one palm into his chest. It pops up. He sticks a hand out, grabs it while he's falling over. You'll see it on the highlights reels. Great, good catch. The bit that I really want to celebrate, though, is the way that he gets up, roars into the air, and then turns upwards and just throws the ball straight up. It's like he wanted to throw that ball into the sun. He was like, I am so pumped up, I'm going to hurl this into the heart of the sun, setting off a chain reaction that's going to set off a supernova effect that's going to engulf the entire Earth and everybody on it. That's how strongly I feel about this wicket.
It's like when you see in some parts of the world firing machine guns up into the air to celebrate. It's kind of like that. Where do the bullets go?
Yeah.
Where do the bullets go when you fire them straight in the air?
Kill people.
I really
they genuinely do. There's like it's a common-ish cause of fatality in those countries that do that kind of thing. I was stop anyone.
I was sitting with the Irish families and fans when that caught and bowled was taken in, and look, they put on 100 and plenty by that point, but the celebration was great out there too. So fair play to the Irish fans who hadn't enjoyed much of a day, the support staffs and partners and kids and so on, but they had that moment. And fee on hand, I picked that too. I did ask Andy Balbirnie yesterday, will Fionn play? And I spoke to an Irish journalist, said no chance, no way he plays well. He did play. He got his cap today.
He did play, and he threw a ball into the sun. Right, that's enough from us. This has been the Final Word Daily with Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins. If you like our work, patreon.com/thefinalword is where you can support what we're doing across this massive English international summer. Men's Ashes, Women's Ashes, World Test Championship final. It's all happening. 8 test matches in 8 weeks, and the rest.
Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary.
There we go. That's it from us. We'll see you tomorrow for day 2.